The first personality is the entrepreneur. I've mentioned the entrepreneur. The entrepreneur, ladies and gentlemen, is the dreamer. The entrepreneur is the one who invents what the business is going to be when it's done. What is it going to look like? What is it going to act like? What is it going to feel like? What is it going to be? What's going to be the experience of it to my customers? How large is it going to be? How many employees are we going to have? How many locations are we going to have? What are our products and range of services and so on? What's my dream? What's my story? If you don't have a story, you don't have a business. You have to have a story. You have to have a story for your employees, for your banker, for your vendors, for your customers. Who am I? And what's the thing that's bigger than I am called my business? That's what the entrepreneur does. I once asked the former chairman and chief executive officer of the former Brenton Banks, who was retired at the time I talked to him, I said, what did you consider your job to be when you were there? And he said, I was the keeper of the flame. I had to make sure the flame kept burning and everybody saw it and followed it. It was the light I shined on where we're going, okay? That's an entrepreneurial thought. I once had the distinct pleasure of meeting a man in California by the name of Marty Sklar. Marty Sklar, as a young man, went to work in Anaheim, California as a young engineer for a man named Walt. And he went to work for him at a time when Disney World was just, or Disneyland was just opening. It was just getting underway, so he wasn't in on the construction of it. By the time Orlando was under consideration, Marty had risen to the level of chief Imagineer. That was his job. So he was the guy that stood in the open field in Orlando with Walt while Walt told the story. This is what I see. This is what my mind's eye can see right in front of me in this large multi-acre area. And he described with absolute detail the stuff that would be going on there, and Epcot and so on, and underground utilities and trash removal and so on. And Marty, the engineer, is sitting there thinking, oh, this is crazy. You know, we're in Florida. You dig down 4 feet, you get water. What do you mean basement? You know, and Walt's saying, raise the basement. I don't care how you do it. We're going to do it. And to Marty, it was an absolutely pure entrepreneurial moment, because by the time Walt described what he was describing, Marty could go back to the other Imagineers and say, hey folks, this is what we're going to do. Let me tell you what we need to do, and here's the end result. That is the work of an entrepreneur. Let's go to personality number 3, and then I'll describe the one in the middle. The third personality is the technician, who I've also mentioned. The technician is the doer. The technician is the one who does what needs to be done. It's anything, not with a capital T, with a small t. It's called, you know, as I said, opening the doors, closing the doors, changing the light bulbs, making it, shipping it, taking the money to the bank, you know, finding new leads, selling, etc. Those are all doing things that have to happen in a business. They are the act that results from the vision. They're the reality of the vision, if you will. That's the job of the technician. So the technician is the doer. In the middle is the manager. The manager, ladies and gentlemen, is the enabler. The manager's job is not to do the work of the technician or to be the entrepreneur, but to figure out how to bridge the vision to the doing of it. How does work work? How do we make it work consistently and predictably at a profit so that we know it's turnkey? Now, when you think about how these 3 characters think, I want to begin with a premise, and the premise is no business, your business, no business I've ever seen has any chance of becoming great, of becoming world-class, of becoming extremely valuable unless all 3 of these personalities are in the business firing on all cylinders at the same time, alive and well. The vision's alive, the doing of everything is alive consistently and predictably, and the manager is creating and innovating constantly on the way of doing the work and enabling it to happen. In other words, creating the intelligence of the business, if you will. turning the dream into intelligence, which in turn turns into action. So you think about how these three work, and the technician thinks of income and money as one thing. It's what I get to take home. It's my food. It's my rent. And I'm going to trade my time to do a certain kind of work for that money. The technician, when they think of money, has no concern about whether the business is going to make it or not. The manager looks at money and says, I've got to see money as profit. You can have all the revenue in the world and all the income in the world, but if you don't have a profit, you don't have a business. Time is a commodity to be managed. The less time we have to spend and the less money we have to spend on time, the better. Can we do it with something that doesn't need to take a nap? To put it crudely, right? And work shifts as well, because is there a different way that work can happen or that we can work in order to accomplish the vision consistently and predictably? So the nature of the work shifts. You've seen it happen over the last 20 years dramatically with the onset of information technology and so on. Work has shifted incredibly. And then there's the entrepreneur. The entrepreneur sees time, money, and work differently. The entrepreneur sees money as equity. Equity. An entrepreneur will eat mac and cheese as long as it takes to make it happen. Time is eternity to an entrepreneur, as long as it takes. And work is pure creation. It's pure innovation. Now, let's go back to my premise and imagine the small business getting started and accepting my premise. You have to be thinking all three ways at the same time. Are you feeling the schizophrenia here? How this begins to shake apart after a while? What happens is, in truth, the entrepreneur begins to go to sleep because after a while you begin to discount the dream and you begin to say, what was I thinking? And then you begin to forget it because it's too painful to remember because, you know, that was just a silly dream. I thought that this was going to happen. Well, that didn't happen. And so you just shove it aside. The manager begins to go to sleep. Why? Because it's just too hard to get people to do what I told them to do over and over again, and they still show up late, they still leave early, they still don't do what they're supposed to, et cetera, so I might as well just do it myself. So because we're by nature doers, we just continue to think, maybe if I just do it myself, it'll get done. So who takes over the ship? The technician. The technician begins to rule the roost. And what does a technician create but a job that depends on you? Your business now depends on you. You've designed it, you've created it, and there you are. That has to change, obviously, unless you really like it that way. Most people I talk to really don't, if they're honest.